It's 9:29. Maybe you can start to make your way to the seats. And we've got. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great to see everyone here today, and we've got some special guests that Executive Vice President Arnie Katz will be addressing and welcoming.
Good morning. Good morning. Hope you all enjoyed breakfast. Here are some welcome guests, and we enjoyed them sharing this experience and this panel discussion today with us. Thanks all for being here. Ed Saul from Commissioner Maria Sachs' office. Victoria Nolan from Palm Beach County Legislative Delegation. Amy Ebersbach from Palm Beach County Tax Collector's Office. Lieutenant John Wink from Palm Beach Sheriff's Office. Miles Osborne from Lake Worth Drainage District. Gwen Gonzalez from Representative Skidmore's office. Chris Keene, Major Chris Keene, Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, and Leslie Schreiberg from Palm Beach Sheriff's Office. Welcome everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Arnie. At this time, I usually give you some announcements. So we've had a couple of mature driver courses that are scheduled in January, in February, and March. So if your association would like one, contact me. Everybody knows how to contact me in the newsletter that you receive every month. There is a little advertisement in there for the mature driver course. Remember, you get insurance credit for that. So let your board members know, and if they'd like one, they can contact me. A lot has been going on, a lot of construction or destruction. Especially of the agricultural reserve. We have a big issue out there with a certain governmental office that wants to be on a very constrained roadway out there, and we don't want that. And there's updates all the time in the newsletter. We have many associations out on Lyons Road that are a part of the Alliance. We've got, of course, the bridges. We've got Miser Country Club. We've got the 7 bridges, and they really are opposed to that. So we're going to be taking a strong stand with that. We have to work on maintaining some amount of open space, and the stress on our infrastructure is unbelievable out there, especially along Lyons Road. Remember, keep up with all of our information through our emails, which we don't send out more than once or twice a week, and also the newsletter that we send out every month. We have our first responders here today. They always give us a great update. We have Captain Sand to give us an update of our District 4.
Thank you, Lori. Good morning. All right, it's cold enough out there for you?
Yeah.
Who got a cold besides me? Thank you. I feel left out. So forgive me if I'm a little raspy this morning. But I can't believe it, we're here. We're here. End of December already, end of the year already. I can't believe how fast the years are flying by. The year's gone by quick, and a lot of crazy things have happened. We lived through a hurricane, we've lived through a tornado, and what else can go wrong, right? All right, so we did okay. Overall, I'm very pleased. Under all circumstances, I'm very pleased with our levels of crime in West Delray Beach. It was a very collective effort of the detectives, our patrolmen, the deputies, our partners in the communities, our private security partners out there. At the beginning of the year, I think I told you guys that we started off really rough with the auto thefts and auto burglaries, but I'm happy to announce to you that we're ending the year very strong. Really, we knocked it out of the park. We're above the 40, 50, 60% on a decline, better than what we did last year. So I'm very happy about that. Our violent crime, I've told you before, we're very blessed you guys to live and work in a very safe community. Our violent crime is little to none, really. There's nothing even to mention that I should even mention to you. Just always, always let that be not a pause for your security and your situational awareness, but please just be mindful wherever you are, all right? We're looking at traffic. Traffic crashes are coming down. That means to me, like I've told you many times, that people aren't getting hurt. We're probably down around 7 to 8% on the year, which is very good, all right? So just please, I contribute that to your effort. Slow down, take your time, and be mindful and courteous to everybody else out there on the road, okay? And I expect the same from everybody else to do that to you. We have our holiday action plans in place, monitoring the shopping plazas and the community. Please do your part by putting up your valuables, securing your valuables. Please lock your doors. I mean, every time I come in to see you guys, I get stopped to say hello, and there's 2 or 3 more folks here that are telling me, well, they got my car, or they got my neighbor's car, but can you imagine, Captain, they didn't lock the door? They left the keys in the car. You know, we really do want to help you, but help us help you. You've heard me say that to you many, many times, okay? I also want to say thank you again. We're coming to, again, like I said, the ending of 2024, and I want to thank you all for being here. Every month we're here together. It means you're involved, you have a voice, you're vested in your communities, but you're also very super important to me and us and law enforcement community, because you're eyes and ears out there, all right? So we're forever grateful for what you did for us, all right? One last thing before I go. I want to ask something of y'all, and usually I'm a guy that gives and I take very little and ask for even less. But I'm going to ask all of you this time for something. As we come into the holiday season, specifically this year, I want you to keep in your hearts and your minds and your prayers our fallen deputies. Excuse me. We just lost 3 motormen.
Yep.
So let's honor them this season, okay? Thank you. I'll see you guys next year.
Let's have a moment of silence for the fallen deputies. Thank you, Captain Stant. We have Chief Stansberry, and I'll give you my microphone while I wipe the other one since Captain Stant told us.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to just start by expressing our condolences from Fire Rescue to the PBSO family for the loss of the 3 deputies. Very sad events that occurred. Palm Beach County Fire Rescue is with you guys. Thank you very much for all you do to keep us safe. A little update about things. Luckily now hurricane season is over. That ended on December 1st, and on December 1st my wife made me take down the shutters. I left them up for a few weeks, so but December 1st made me get out there and take the shutters down. So now we get the light in the house. So if you have any of your extra hurricane supplies, you can, if you need to, you can get into them. If they'll last for another year, you can set those aside and keep those for next year, because I'm sure next year will probably be another busy hurricane season. Some things going on. We're still, Palm Beach County Fire Rescue is still running lots of calls. We're still building and anticipating future growth out in the western areas. We have the new station, which is going up north of Atlantic on Lyons. That is a little bit north of your guys' zone, but the trickle-down effect will have coverage out there, so we won't need to be pulling any units from this area to go out there and run calls. So last month, for the month of November, the second busiest battalion in all of Palm Beach County ran a little over 2,000 calls. This area, Battalion 4, which covers this area, we ran over 3,000 calls. So this area ran 1,000 more calls than the second busiest battalion, which we're here for you, we're ready to respond, and we anticipate growth, and we have lots of units and personnel in place to take care of you. So when anyone needs it, call 911 and we'll be there to support you. Yeah, luckily hurricane season is now over, so just looking forward. Be careful. Sometimes people like to use flames for candles and stuff around the holidays. Sometimes they forget about those. They'll start little fires. So just be careful with any flames you have, and enjoy your holidays, and I will see you next year. So enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Stansbury. And Felicia Goldstein, we do have her here, yes, from Congresswoman Lois Frankel's office, and she just has a few words for you. And Senator Berman's here, but she's going to be coming up here and having a seat with our panel. We'll be hearing from her all about legislative changes and proposals for the insurance. Felicia Goldstein, great to see you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy holidays to everyone. Just wanted to do a quick update to remind you all that on December 7th, enrollment is no longer going to be open after that day for Medicare. So if you haven't taken care of that, please do. The Congresswoman wanted me to say thank you very much for everyone in here who's voted for her. And those who haven't, we still represent you. Our office is right on Atlantic and Hagen Ranch. If you have any problems with a federal agency, give us a call, stop by. We're happy to try to do our best to help you resolve those issues. So have a great holiday. Thank you. And just remember, the Congresswoman is always on your side.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's it right here for our elected officials. Others are in meetings right now. So we do have always a little commercial before we start our actual keynote speakers, and it is with Rapid Recovery, Nicholas Cassidy. He can come up here, just tell you a little something. He did sponsor the breakfast today, and the bagels and the cream cheese and all. Now, the rest of it was from our 4 panelists here in Plastridge Insurance, the warm buffet this morning, so we thank them as well. But, yes, but Nicholas Cassidy from Rapid Recovery, thank you very much for the breakfast sponsorship as well. Here you go. Tell us something about yourself.
Is it working?
Yes.
All right, thank you first of all very much for having me today. So if you would come by the back, say hello. I've got a couple of helpful tips for everybody. So you know, the Rapid team is a fully licensed state general contractor, and we're also a licensed mold, water, and fire restoration company. As we move into the holiday season, I have a lot of tips for the fire situation, as our company works probably between 75 and 100 fires per year. That includes the initial cleanup, all the way through permitting, structural engineering, plumbing, electrical, and the complete rebuild. So the restoration side does the initial cleanup, and then the reconstruction side has the complete ability to rebuild. We do general contracting as well, in homes, flooring, different things like that, kitchens, bathrooms, and clubhouses. So swing by, talk about the holiday season. The trees light up pretty easily. You're hanging lights with nails. Old faulty electrical systems, things like that are a huge danger this time of year. So thank you again for having me, and have a great morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Terrific. Well, it's really an interesting meeting that we are having today, and we're going to start out with, we have Senator Berman here, and we have Jason Rogers de Cruz from Siegfried Rivera, and we've got Cesar Menendez from Care Construction, and we have Connor Lynch from Plastridge Insurance. We're going to have Senator Berman start off, okay, with some of the proposed legislative changes, any issues that we will be facing. Then we'll have Jason Rogers de Cruz, and then we can have the Cesar Menendez, and then we'll end with our insurance agent. We'll go right down the line. So each will be speaking for about 5 to 7 minutes. I asked them to give a very complete rundown of whatever they need to tell us that it's super important. So each one is going to take about 5 minutes, and then at the end, any questions we'll take from the audience. Okay, we'll start with Senator Berman. Great to see you. Thank you.
Great to see.
Okay,
There, we're on. Good morning, everyone. So happy to see everyone, and happy holidays. And Lori, thank you for organizing this panel. So the property insurance problem, as you all know, has been here for many years, And we in the legislature have not done a particularly good job of addressing it, and instead, every year rates go up. We've tried a lot of different things. We limited the ability of trial lawyers to bring lawsuits, which means if you have a claim against your insurance company, it's going to be a little harder for you to find an attorney to do it on your behalf. We also gave some money for reinsurance for the companies to be able to purchase that reinsurance money. But overall, the things we've done have not really helped that much. So there's a couple things I want to explain to you about what I think are some solutions and what I think might be discussed this year in Tallahassee. So my first solution is one that is on the national level, and so we don't have any impact in Tallahassee, but we have been advocating for it and passing resolutions or memorials telling Washington to do it, and that would be to have a program like we have with flood insurance, and it would cover catastrophes. And if that was the case, you pull hurricanes pretty much out of Florida policies, windstorm damage, and then the insurance market could level out if that ever happened. But that's pretty much a pipe dream at this point, so we won't spend too much time on that bill. The other bill, the other way I think we could start to make a difference is a bill that I brought last year and that I'm bringing again this year. Last year we didn't get any traction because they said we had put in place some of those ideas that I told you about, and they wanted to see how they were working out. I got to tell you, anybody in this room have their insurance rates go down? Raise your hand. Not too many hands. So, all right, you were lucky. So I think maybe this year I will hopefully get some traction from my bill. And what my bill says is we are not all experts in insurance in Tallahassee. We don't know the issue as well as as my colleagues who are who are on the panel here today. So put together a task force of all the different people. Put insurers, reinsurers, brokers, roofers, trial attorneys, consumers, and let them give us suggestions about what they think we can do to lower property insurance rates and make sure that people get proper coverage also, because it's a dual field that we want to address. I really do think that is the answer for us. We did it in 2008. We actually had a task force in Florida, and then when they were done, we actually adopted some of the recommendations that the task force has. So I'm hopeful that this will be the year that they say, okay, let's look into doing this task force. Obviously, it's not immediate because they have to spend time making the recommendations. So anything that they recommend would be even a year off in being implemented. But I really think that that's a very positive step for the state of Florida to go through. So one of the biggest problems we have is the issue with Citizens Insurance. Citizens was created by the state of Florida to be the insurance company of last resort when other people wouldn't insure you. Unfortunately, as rates went up and things got tight, as more insurance companies left the market in Florida, Citizens became the first resort insurers for many. And we had recently up to 1.2 million policies were issued by Citizens. It's down. They're doing this effort to bring in other companies and what they call depopulate Citizens. It is now down to about 1 million policies. And remember, Citizens is us. So if there is a catastrophe and something happens, we, the citizens of the state of Florida, are going to have to put in more money. Also, if insurance companies go out of business, the state of Florida has to step in also. But Citizens is a very high risk right now for us. So we need to really spend time figuring out where we want to go with Citizens. And there's been a suggestion, and it's done in the state of Texas. And I actually think it's a good idea. I'm not sure if it'll gain any traction. But the suggestion is to use Citizens only for windstorm in coastal communities. So that will sort of take away the whole high rate, those are the real high-risk carriers, high-risk insurers, excuse me, insureds, high-risk insureds, because those are the ones who are at the highest risk of having a hurricane come across and having to pay out a significant amount of money. If we did that and we took them and put them in a separate category, maybe that would be similar to the national insurance, doing like a flood insurance kind of thing. So that's something that we really need to sit and discuss and analyze in Tallahassee. I know there will be a bill about that, and we'll see how that works. The other thing I want to discuss sort of briefly is the issue of the flood insurance. Like I said, I love the idea that we have flood insurance and it spreads the risk so that your flood insurance premiums are not that crazy. A lot of people do not have flood insurance, and believe it or not, when a storm comes, you can be hit by water and it's not wind related, and only your flood insurance will pay it at that time. Your wind coverage won't cover anything. One of the problems with the flood insurance is it is on the national level, and most of it has a pretty low amount. So I spoke to my colleague in Tampa last night, and she told me Tampa's got a huge problem because the last storm was a flood-related storm, not a wind-related. And a lot of the people did have flood insurance because they lived in low-lying areas or on the water, but their maximum limit is like $250,000, and that will not cover you to rebuild an entire house, which some of these houses, my friend's daughter's house had 4 feet of water. And once you have 4 feet of water, you basically have to rebuild your entire house. So I think that's another issue that we could have to be discussing right now in Tallahassee as the session starts. We start session in the beginning of March, but we have committee weeks starting right now. Actually, that's where our representatives are. They're in Tallahassee. Committee weeks for senators are next week. Don't ask me why. That was a mistake of their part. But then in January and February, we have committee weeks, and hopefully some of these bill ideas will get discussed in committee weeks, and we'll start to percolate, like how are we going to respond? I think we're going to have to respond on this issue about the flood, what people are going to get. We're going to have to respond on the issue of what we want citizens to do. And like I said, I hope my bill about a task force is also being discussed. So we have a lot to do in Tallahassee. I will tell you, we had our swearing in, and both the Senate President and the House Speaker said that property insurance is a priority. So you can be sure there will be something coming out of Tallahassee. Not, we can't say, I can't tell you that it's going to solve all the problems, but we are going to be addressing it, and hopefully we'll start to change the property insurance climate. So I'll let my colleagues speak now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Rogers de Cruz. I'm with the law firm of Siegfried Rivera. We are a community association construction and also real estate law firm. We are located in Coral Gables, which is Miami. We're located in Fort Lauderdale, and we also have an office in Palm Beach. We could probably speak about insurance for 2 or 3 hours straight. And go through war stories and all the rest of it. I'm going to try to keep it very high level, give you all some observations from my view, being a construction trial attorney and being a trial attorney. I prosecute construction cases, I prosecute insurance cases, first-party property cases, third-party cases against insurance companies as well. And I have a few observations which I'd like to also share with the senator. Number one, I think with regard to the flooding, the flood maps need to be updated. I think we're all operating under some really old maps. Some of these zones are shown to not be in flood zones, but they're actually being impacted by flooding, right? So I think overall, a lot of these flood maps need to be updated.
They updated a couple years ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's great if that happened for you all. I don't think that's happening across the state, but that's awesome that's happening for you all. Number two, something that I've observed over the past couple of years historically, and that is Has anybody handled a first-party property case where you bring a claim, okay, you bring a claim against your own insurance company for hurricane damage or water damage or what have you. You make a claim against your insurance company. If your insurance company doesn't pay it out or doesn't give you fair value, then what's the next step, right? Either you have to file a lawsuit, right? And you end up filing a lawsuit, and of course, you should be entitled to your attorney's fees and costs. So years ago, we had what's called a one-way attorney fee provision. And what that did was it kept the insurance companies honest. They knew that if they were wrongfully withholding monies or not liquidating a claim, they would be on the hook for attorney's fees. Well, that's gone, okay? That's completely gone. And I think that the legislature went a bit too far 2 or 3 years ago when they amended it because they completely eliminated the attorney fee provision altogether. Now, there are a couple of ways that I think that could be handled. Instead of it being a one-way attorney fee provision where the carrier is only responsible for the fees, I think it should go back to a prevailing, or it should be shifted to a prevailing party attorney fee provision, which basically says the following. If you win, then you get your fees. If the carrier wins, right, and you wrongfully brought a claim against the carrier and they win, they get their attorney's fees, right? So it keeps everyone honest that somebody is going to be on the hook for attorney's fees. And why is that important? It's important because, number one, let's say you suffer damage, I don't know, your roof is damaged, $10,000 in damages, and your carrier comes back and says, I'll give you $1,000. You're like, what am I going to do with $1,000? I can't do anything, right? You go to a lawyer, and the lawyer says, I can't prosecute a $10,000 claim. I'm going to spend more in attorney's fees to get $10,000 than it is, you know, at the end of the day, for you all spending the fee amount on me. So you end up spending $20,000 on an attorney to prosecute a $10,000 claim. You're not going to get your attorney's fees back, and where are you at the end of the day? The homeowners get screwed, all right? And that's a big problem. So I think there should be a shift to prevailing party attorney's fees. I know there was a big shift to help the market, to make the insurance companies feel comfortable, but I think we got to swing back now and make it fair for everyone. I think everybody agree with that. I mean, that seems fair, right? That should be done. Yes, sir.
If I understand what you're saying, if the insurance company wins the case against the plaintiff, the homeowners, one of the reasons why the homeowners brought a claim against the insurance company is because they didn't have the money to do repairs.
Right.
If they lose the case for whatever reason, now they have to pay for their own repairs and they have to pay for attorney fees.
Right.
Isn't that adding insult to injury?
Well, it could be, but at this point, you don't have the right to attorney's fees at all. So before, for example, the insurance, like, let's be fair, right? So for the insurance companies, they're going to look at it, they're going to say, we have all these frivolous claims. Whether we agree with it or not, they're going to say there are all these frivolous claims that are being filed. We don't have a right to attorney's fees, so why don't we abolish attorney's fees altogether? Nobody gets fees, right? But for those of you that have real claims that are not frivolous claims, that are legitimate, then you should be able to, I mean, there's no guarantees in trial, right? Nobody knows you're going to win or lose, but you should be able to prevail on it and get your attorney's fees. Now, if you end up losing because the claim is not properly prepared for whatever reason, then that's the drawback to it, right? So you got to be really clear on your claim, the significance of the claim, and whether you really have damages. So for example, a hurricane passes through, there's some damage to your roof, right? Somebody comes out as your expert, takes a look at it and says, I think the whole roof needs to be replaced. But it doesn't really need to be fully replaced. Maybe a small section of it needs to be replaced at a cost of $500, right? So that's the type of issue that I'm talking about. Are you going to file suit for the full $30,000 on a claim that really costs $500? Then at that point, the carrier is looking at it and saying, and by the way, I don't represent carriers at all. I'm just giving you their viewpoint on some of this stuff. Carrier is going to look at it and say, why are you suing me for it? I offered you $500 for it. Now you've taken me to trial on it. I prevailed. Why shouldn't I get my attorney's fees? So you got to look at the pros and cons of everything. But I think we've got to get back to a point where you as a prevailing party are entitled to your attorney's fees. Because right now it's nothing. It's nothing. You don't get anything. right? There's no, at least statutorily, you don't get prevailing party attorney's fees, neither party.
Don't most of these insurance policies buy you into
Well, remember we said the questions will be at the end. And it's okay, save the question. They're going to stay and we're going to all stay. We'd like to hear from each member, give them each 5 minutes, and then you can ask anything you want, okay?
I told you, we could be here for 3 hours.
I know, we could.
You all want to be here for
But,
3 hours.
yeah, no, but.
So let me
please hold
move
your
on,
question.
let me move on to like a couple of other topics, just some big picture takeaways. So for you all, whether you're condominium associations or HOAs, you know, the Chapter 718 for condominium associations is very robust when it comes to the insurance requirements. HOAs, you got to look at your master covenants to determine who's responsible for what, right? You have townhomes that are fully connected, you have master property. I mean, you really have to dig deep into that to determine your insurance responsibilities. But some of the things that I've seen as a trial attorney that you all should be aware of is, number one, and I'm sure Connor, our broker, will talk a little bit more about it, is being underinsured. That's a big problem, right? So if you're dealing with a broker that is not familiar with either Chapter 718 or your master covenants or what's required, you may end up being underinsured, which is a huge problem for you all on the board, because who's going to complain about it? Your membership, and they're going to claim that you guys breached your fiduciary duty, right? So you got to be very careful with that. You got to work with your lawyers on that and say, what are we required to obtain pursuant to 718, 720, the HOA Act, or in addition, our master covenants. That's very important to take a look at that. Number two, you've got to evaluate your policies very carefully because there are numerous exclusions, okay? You think you're covered, you may not be covered. So you got to work with your broker to make sure that some of these exclusions are not included in your policy. I'll give you an example. Represented a condominium in Miami. There was a building going up right next to that condominium, and it caused damage to my client's property. Made a claim against the insurance company. There was an exclusion within the policy that was interpreted by the insurance lawyers on the other side to preclude recovery for millions of dollars of damages to our property. And that exclusion said, if there was an incident that was outside of the association's property, meaning a new tower being constructed, that caused damage to your tower, then that wouldn't be covered. I think that was a tortured reading of that particular language in the policy, but it required full litigation to try to figure that out. Ultimately, we settled it, but just be cognizant of some of these exclusions there. Just because you have an insurance policy doesn't mean that your damages are going to be covered. Number two, setting those type of policies aside, let's talk a little bit about, and I'll turn it over, third-party property policies. So for example, you hire a roofer to come in and perform work on your project. That roofer has what's called a commercial general liability policy. Make sure that you evaluate, first of all, make sure that whomever you hire is fully insured and has those policies in hand. And number two, no exclusions for your property. I'll give you another horror story. Represented a condominium in Miami, was a tower. We were going to do a completely brand new re-roof at $500,000. The client decided on a roofer. That roofer provided the insurance, or was supposed to provide the requisite insurance under the construction contract. And what we found out was ultimately they defectively installed the roof. We had to replace the roof. We ended up suing them, and we said, hey, give us your updated insurance policy. And there was an exclusion for, guess what, condominiums, right? So how are you supposed to figure that out when at the end of the day there is a contractual requirement that says you must have these policies in place? So what's the next step? The next step is, do you send it to your broker? Do you have them deliver the insurance policy ahead of time? Do we have to review it? I mean, these are very complicated issues. And the actual COI, like the actual certificate of insurance, identified my client by name as an additional insured. And it said, so-and-so Condominium Association, Inc. on the COI, right? So by the time that we got into litigation, we looked at They delivered the policy, we looked at the policy, we said, wait a minute here. What's going on with this exclusion? Reached out to the broker screwed up. Okay? And the broker started freaking out because they said, oh my goodness, like we issued a policy that doesn't cover this property. I mean, ultimately, we got very creative. We got 100 cents on the dollar to get the case fully settled, but just another horror story about exclusion. So just keep that in mind. And I'll go ahead and turn it over. I'm sure you've got a lot of questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Jason. First of all, my condolences to the officers that were here on their fallen officers. But when it comes to roofing, and I kind of want to stay on the same subject he was on, I have for several years now where we do the roofing project, we'll be called in, we'll get the contract.
Could you introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Cesar Menendez, Care Construction. The number one thing that you want any contractor, whether it's roofing, concrete, painting, whatever it may be, have your broker contact their broker, double check that their policy matches your requirements for what they're doing. We have done that in the past many times where our broker is contacting our clients, condominium insurance broker, and confirming that we have the policy to properly insure our project for the condominium and for ourselves. The condominium also has to meet certain requirements to bring us in to do the project. So staying within that subject, it is a good idea. Just that communication will save everybody and him a lot of time in the long run. Also, secondly, what we're running mostly into right now when it comes to roofing is the insurance companies not recertifying your policy. If your roof is 15 years or 20 years, depending on the system that you have, they're not renewing your policies. And there's a lot of emergency, hurry up and bid and let's get a contractor, let's get this done because we're not gonna have insurance. That is happening more and more in every county, which is really a bad situation to be in. Because when you push roofing contractors or any contractor, hurry up and bid, they're gonna bid high and not review everything that needs exactly to be done to cover additional expenses that may not even be there. So if you're coming up, you're at 13 years, 14 years, or you have a 20-year system with your roofing, please make sure you allow the time for the contractors to properly bid. Then we're gonna come out depending on the roofing system that you have. If you have on a condominium, Butamin, or you have, what's the other one? TPO system. We'll come out and we'll do the core samples, double check for moistures, different areas of the roof, and make sure that if it's an isolated area, your insurance company, it's always up to the insurance company, may allow a repair, and you can stretch out and then give the proper timing for the contractors to bid the full replacement of your roof in the future. But you want to get that little extra time, not that rush, we need to redo this now. It's important. It just saves everybody a lot of time, saves the board a lot of headaches as well when the insurance comes back and says, we're not renewing your policy. It's nothing worse than the residents coming up and learning about that information.
There's a new law saying they can't cancel you just because of the age of your roof is 15 years or older, but it favors the insurance.
Yeah, it's 15 and some are going for as far as 20 years, I think.
The laws.
It's 15 now? You made 15.
You have to get a roofer certified that your roof has 5 more years of
Correct. That's done with the core samples. But if it does have moisture and it shows moisture underneath, they will come back and say you need full roof replacement. Yes, sir.
However, there is a difference between cancellation and non-renewal. An insurance company can non-renew for any reason they want.
I'm sorry, I got distracted a little bit.
There's a difference between canceling a policy and non-renewing the
Correct.
policy.
We have a lot of leaders here in this group. You're a very special leader too. If you just, it's hard to get back and forth. I'll give you your own mic, how's that? Okay, if we could just wait. You do have the time, don't you?
Not yet.
Okay, we'll stay here till 11 if you need.
No, we'll be quick,
Thank you.
we'll be quick.
Because we also want to hear from the insurance agent.
Yeah, he's gonna answer more questions that you're gonna ask, so let me give him the mic and he can take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Obviously, roofing has been a huge topic for several years now. So just a quick introduction. I'm Connor Lynch with Plastridge Insurance. I'm in my 23rd year with Plastridge. Plastridge insures over 1,000 condominium and homeowners associations in Florida. We're about to celebrate our 106th year in business. We were founded in Delray. So just to give you a quick overview, that, more than in the past, it's always kind of been something where board members talk to other board members at different associations and kind of get an idea of what's happening in the insurance market. That is becoming tougher and tougher to do because, there's not a broad stroke answer of what's occurring anymore. The insurance companies probably 8 to 10 years ago moved to a much heavier computer modeling system when it comes to catastrophe planning. And just so that everybody understands the structure, some of you I know this already, we're an insurance agent, we act as a broker on your behalf. We shop every insurance company that we can, and then the insurance companies, when you pay your premium to them, they usually take anywhere from 40 to 60 cents on every dollar, and they turn around and buy insurance for themselves called reinsurance. And they can structure that in many different ways. So what's happening now is the insurance companies have been using this in catastrophe modeling, they call it probable maximum loss studies, to determine what kind of loss they expect to have for your specific association. If there's either a 1 in 100 year storm, a 1 in 250 year storm, sometimes they can even take it out further, 1 in 500 year storm. And then they try to assess, okay, if we take this much money in, will we have enough money to pay claims in that area? It depends on many variables that are completely out of your control. Your location, what type of construction for your building, how many other clients they have in the area, and those types of factors. The key things for you to think about it as board members or people that are actively involved in your community are the two biggest price point factors are roofing and opening mitigation protection, so Class A or not. Do you have shutters or impact windows that are meeting that standard for your community? When it comes to modeling, those are the two biggest items that affect pricing, right? So when we're talking about the commercial side, the association's insurance, they're typically looking at those things. How old is the roof? Type of construction, year it was built, but how old is the roof, and are there mitigating features? The good news about the insurance market right now, which I'm sure many of you will get to hear, and I saw at the beginning a couple people spoke into this, the insurance market has flattened out. And even with the storms of Milton and Helene, the pricing right now is coming in fairly flat, let's say 0 to 5% range, 0 to 10 at the worst. That is kind of the typical, but again, very tough to answer a broad stroke question because there are associations that due to statute 718 might be 3 years in from their last appraisal. So even if the insurance rate came in flat, if they had a 15% increase in the appraised value, they're still going to see a 15% increase proportionately to the property-related coverages, right? So, and you have to take into account, obviously the big premium is related typically to the property and hurricane coverage, but the liability markets over the last several years, as you heard, both the law firm and Senator Berman speak about, there have been changes in the legislation, some positive, some not as positive, to try to help mitigate the costs related to litigation. We can all agree that there are some things that are not great in how that process works. But at the same time, there was a lot of frivolous and some even fraudulent litigation going on that was costing all of us in the long run that really shouldn't have been there in the first place. So, I understand both sides of this issue. I actually spend time going up to Tallahassee. I see Senator Berman and others when I'm up there. We talk about these types of things. How can we help get better pricing and options for everybody? The good news is that last year, as of January 1st, most insurance companies buy their reinsurance either January 1st or June 1st. Those are the two big dates for the year. And January 1st is kind of the primary driver of pricing. Last year, there was a very large amount, about $110 billion of additional capital put into the reinsurance market. So even though the storms from Hurricane Milton and Helene happened this year, as Senator Berman said, many of those claims will be flood-related claims. Unfortunately, in the Carolinas and areas like that, very few people purchase flood insurance there. In Florida, you should very much consider it, whether you're in what people say is a flood zone or not. And that's something that I think we should spend a second on. Mortgage companies serve a great purpose, banks, etc. They talk about whether you're in a flood zone or not, and that's not really accurate. From their perspective, being in a flood zone means a high-risk flood zone, and that means that you have to buy flood insurance. If you're in a preferred flood zone, which is still a flood zone, you don't have to buy it for your mortgage's purposes, right? That doesn't mean you don't need it. More than a quarter of all flood insurance claims come from preferred flood zones. So it's not no risk. You should assess it. It depends a lot on drainage. But even for people who've been here, I've been in Florida over 44 years. I hear all the time, I've been here 40 years and I've never had a flood on my property. You know, people in Asheville were saying the same thing. And unfortunately, things change a lot when we do construction, right? So over the last 30 years, look at all the construction that's happened here. As people are building these new condominiums and other complexes, they're elevating the land, they're bringing fill in, and now that water is going to drain somewhere else. So it changes the way that water flows, which is why the remapping does become a very important topic. So commercially, we are seeing rate relief. I will say that the market is splitting a bit compared to the way it used to be. As I said, it's very tough to do a broad stroke answer. If your building has very old roofs, typically 20 years now, there was an 18-month stretch where it dropped to 15 years that insurance companies were really struggling. The state did step in and say they can't cancel for that, although, you know, if we're being fully honest, it's kind of a game, right? They can find something else to cancel on if they want to. I mean, that's the reality. And so, well, even when we talk with legislators about the things they're doing that with great intentions, it's important for people like me and what Senator Berman said, having us at the table, because I can tell you the game the insurance company can play to get around that item, and that's really important. So you need to have an agent that knows how that system works and can talk it through with you and be realistic with you. And you might not like everything you're hearing, but you want to be planning for more than just the year ahead of you. And I think the biggest mistake that a lot of us make is, what's the deal I can get right now? We need to be looking at 5-10 years. How are we doing this, right? We might have to swallow a pill this year on an insurance cost, knowing that if we do it in a certain way, over a 10-year stretch, we're going to save a lot of money. You know, you need to be working with someone that's thinking more futuristic and not just what's in front of you. What's in front of us is still very important. And obviously making sure that we're not cutting out coverages that are critical, that there aren't exclusions being thrown in. The good news is there were, I think, 11 approved new insurance companies in Florida last year. 8 of them for condominium associations. A couple of them started by just taking policies from citizens, so they're not actually actively writing new policies on their own, although in 2025 it sounds like they might. We are contracted with all 8 of them. Not all insurance companies are. Another thing that's changed over the years is it used to kind of be the assumption that a big insurance agency, a big national, would have all the markets. And that's not necessarily the case, especially in Florida. In fact, at least 2 or 3 of the new companies coming into the markets have not appointed most of the big insurance companies nationals. So it's a very big deal, you know, kind of keeping up on what's happening in the markets. The good news with that competition, you know, the reality is what I'm telling you about the market is correct, right? That they're looking for roofs less than 20 years old. They're looking for whether or not you have Class A protection, and those are the big rating factors. But with so many new companies entering the market, if you happen to be within the guidelines of those newer companies, you might have an older roof and you might not have Class A, and you still might get competition that can still improve your pricing, right? Whenever we can get multiple companies to the table, it's the best opportunity to leverage them against each other for the best pricing and coverage terms. So that's always the goal in our case, is to get as many companies to the table. I know insurance works differently. It's frustrating for us and for you that shopping insurance is challenging. I have to tell you, I've talked to many attorneys about this over the years. The best thing that you can do is find an agent you trust, that you really think is going to do the right job, that has all of the markets possible, and that can represent those for you, and let them go to market and bid it. You still have to, have the conversation, talk everything through, have them commit to you that they're going to be fully transparent, that you will see every quote. Or don't let the agent choose for you. Say, I want to see everything. The way we do it is we put a spreadsheet in front of our clients, we put every company's quotes side by side so that you can see the pros and cons and compare it as closely as we can, apples to apples. It's almost never apples to apples, but it's close, So in general, that's kind of the good news, is that the market is flattening out. I've actually seen a few policies over the last 2 months decrease in pricing for the first time in a couple of years. So very positive signs, a lot of the changes and things that have happened. As much as some of the legislative changes from 2023, again, not perfectly ideal, I think what it has done is allowed us as a state to hold insurance companies accountable, saying, listen, the legislature gave you what you asked for. You better come through. So the people running those companies are feeling some of the heat for those changes having happened. The downside, and what some of you might remember, some of you might not know about, is in March of 2023, when a lot of those legislative changes went through, there were about 30,000 lawsuits filed right before that to try to get in under the old guidelines, right? So all of that had to play through the legal system, which was backed up due to COVID. So it kind of goes on and on. We're just seeing the tail end of a lot of those suits. So we are hoping to see the liability markets improving in the coming year as well. But I will say in general, unless you have mitigating circumstances, if you have some things for the association, like I said, an old roof, even if you can get away with a few more years of a roof, you have to really start learning to play the chess game of insurance, right? If you have a 20-year-old roof and the incumbent insurance company is telling you, we'll accept the fact that you have 3 years of life remaining in that. That's great, as long as you're okay taking whatever that insurance company gives you for pricing. Because if you go out to shop that with other companies with a 20-year-old roof, they're probably not going to quote you. So you have to kind of play this chess game of, is it worth me re-roofing to be marketable to everybody possible? Or do I want to squeeze as much as I can out of the roof, knowing I might be paying a little more in insurance for 3 years in a row? And those are the types of games, and unfortunately you have to have that conversation with your broker, and you need to be on the same page about it, right? Because you want to strategize together and know that you're on that same page. Because there's really not a right answer to that approach, right? It depends on budgeting. Are you prepared? Do you have reserves for a roof? Do you need 3 more years to build it? Depending on cost, depending on the structure and design and layout. The way that it works in insurance is that although many of us sit around feeling like we're in the same boat, it's very different for insurance companies to insure what we call garden style, which is usually 4 stories or less, A-frame roofing, that type of association, versus 4 or more stories, flat roofs, which are insured by completely different companies typically. They're 2 very different situations. And then you have homeowners associations, where you may or may not have property to take into account as well. Some have a clubhouse, some don't have any common area, and then those kind of throw in different factors as well. So that's kind of the quick overview. I know there's probably a lot of questions, so I want to start getting to those. Hopefully I've answered some, or at least given you an idea. It should be hopefully at least starting to plateau, or at least low increases, single digits. Again, if you've made improvements like new roofs or Class A openings, that's really where I'm seeing some of the pricing drops, but hopefully that starts to help.
That's terrific. We got so much important information here. It seems like roofs and litigation, that's the theme today. Before we have any questions, I am giving the opportunity for any other people to speak to anything that anybody said. Maybe Senator Berman would like to say something. Just respond and add additional information, anything, before we go to questions.
Sure, thank you so much, Lori. A couple points I want to raise based on what I just heard. There are a lot of claims being denied. I want you all to know that Citizens has denied a large number of the claims that have come through. And you might have seen a 60 Minutes program about a month ago where there were insurance companies that were changing the claims from the insurance. The insurance adjuster would say, this is here, your roof is damaged, you need $20,000, and then the insurance companies would go back and say, no, you only get $1,000, and they would hand the people $1,000 for a $20,000 claim. So there's still problems in the market. I don't want you to think But I will tell you exactly what Connor said, and that is that when I sat and listened to the Senate President and the House Speaker, they did say, we are going to hold your feet to the fire in the insurance market. We are going to be watching you, especially in how you handle the claims from Helene and Milton. And I'm hopeful that that happens. So we know that there are problems, we're addressing it. And then on the issue of openings, the good about your roof and your shutters or your impact windows, the good news is Florida does have a program to help people out. It's called My Safe Florida Home. And for every $1 you spend, for every $2 you spend, the state will give you $1 up to $10,000. The problem is, we've been doing this program now for a couple years, and we funded last year $200 million for individuals, and that money went very quickly. But we did change the parameters of the program this last year, which will definitely help this room. We categorized it based on need. So the people who apply, who will get the first preference for that program, are senior citizens who are low income. So that, and actually I think all the money went to that first category. Then they go down to people who are low income, and then people just with no income restrictions. So look, if any of you qualify for that, look for that for next year, that you can, start. The money usually becomes available in July. And it's a great program, and when July comes, you can call my office and we'll help you figure out how to apply. This year we also did a pilot project for condominiums to get My Safe Florida Home also. We put aside $30 million. The condominiums could apply for and get $175,000 maximum. But $175 is better than nothing. And the problem was, they opened the program about a month ago on a Friday, and by Wednesday the money was gone and the program was closed. It is a pilot, it was a pilot, so I'm hopeful that we'll come back next year and put more money and change it from a pilot to a permanent program. The program has been really, really popular, and what you can do with the money is fix your roof, fix your doors, fix your windows. You get a certain amount, but it's better than nothing. So at least the legislature is looking at helping you on those issues. Thanks.
Great. Well, terrific. Thank you, Senator Berman. Okay, we can go to questions and let's see. Okay, we'll go right here. I hold the microphone, so.
Okay, a few fast questions. Silicone coatings on the roof, how does that affect the insurance? Second is, if you live on the second floor of a four-story building, how does that affect flood insurance? Do you have to have it if it's required for the ground floor? And what Lori just said, low income, what do they consider low income? Because people will ask.
Okay, I'll take the first two, and then Lori, you can talk about low income. Okay, so a couple different things. The roofing, so it's tough because, a lot of people hear about the silicone coatings and the warranties that come with them. But again, the warranty is for the material itself, not if a hurricane hits, right? So the insurance companies, unfortunately, whether it's right or wrong, they have a lot more data than they ever had before, and the feeling with the insurance companies, and I've talked to roofers that don't agree with this, so I think that's very important to say, but basically insurance companies, for the storms that have happened, and there have been quite a few, although Florida fortunately up until this year wasn't getting the brunt of them, there have been quite a few storms over the last 5 to 6 years, and the insurance companies are now looking at the data and saying if roofs are 16 years or older, they're not performing as well in those storms, and that's the uplift factor, right? So without being able to say this as kindly as possible, the way the insurance company looks at it is that the coating is lipstick on a pig, right? They view it as the underlying roof. The underlying roof still has a lower uplift factor and can peel off. So they're just not crediting that as new roof. So although it's probably half the cost of a roof, it's not really buying you the additional time. So I typically, unfortunately, am recommending to do the full roof when you're at that point. As far as flood insurance, it's a really great question, and I'll give you an example of a case that, of a claim that we had in 04-05. It was actually Gene and Francis up in the Vero area. We had a high-rise tower that had flood damage during a hurricane, and it basically washed out and undermined the building. And the slab of that building cracked. So you pull up to the building looks perfect, but the city stepped in and condemned the building. So although you lived on the 5th floor and you didn't have flood insurance, that building was completely totaled for flood. And if you didn't have flood insurance for that building, then you wouldn't have the funds to rebuild it. So even if you're not, so people think about flooding directly damaging your items, but there is the potential of, water is a very heavy, forceful thing. I was just in Asheville last week. I can tell you it's catastrophic. I still don't understand how some of that will work. I've been in insurance, really technically 30-something years. I'm 23 years since college. But the reality is there's land there that you can't even rebuild on. I mean, it was so washed away, it's just boulders. There's no house, there's no recognition of a house being there. I don't know how that works. I don't know, I've never seen something that catastrophic. I don't know if FEMA will give them money for the house. I mean, you can't even tell that there were houses there at all. There's no road, there's no driveway, the bridges are gone, the land is gone. I've literally never seen anything like it in some of those areas. So we'll see. I mean, we're going to learn a lot through a situation like that. But what I can tell you is, like I said originally, flood insurance is so important. It's relatively inexpensive compared to what you're paying on the other items. It is hard to jump into it, and even at the low limits. So for condominium associations, it's $250,000 per unit, multiplied out by the total number of units that you have. Sometimes that's enough, sometimes it's not. It really depends on the layout of the association. Those are some things that I hope that as time goes on, citizens and the legislature will consider, though. Times have changed. Citizens rates buildings over 10 million at a much higher price point than they do buildings that are replacement value under 10 million. But that's been the same limit for 15, 20 years. Construction costs has changed quite a bit. That limit has never changed. So there's things like that that I think within the guidelines of how we structure things can be considered. But hopefully that answers the first two. Lori, you want to talk into what's considered low income?
Sure, so we just looked the numbers up. It's 80% of median income in your county, and we just looked up from HUD. The median income in Palm Beach County is about $104,000, so low income would be around $80,000 or less in income in order to qualify for the MySafe Florida Home low income.
Okay, we have another question over here. Was it over here?
Yes. Hi, when I lived in California, I got earthquake insurance, not because I was in an earthquake zone, but it was like, sure, why not? So when I moved here, I got flood insurance because I'm not in a flood zone, but sure, why not? My question to you is, to the insurance companies is, beginning with Hurricane Ian, which happened on the west coast of Florida,
Right.
but created a tornado that took out 54 condos in Kings Point, Home Depot, and some of the houses had damage in Cocowood Lakes. Are the insurance companies considering a separate rider just for tornadoes?
So, great question. Tornadoes are actually included under the windstorm provisions of a policy typically, and they can be a different deductible. So the real thing to understand about that situation is, are they going to apply the hurricane deductible, or are they going to apply the all other wind deductible? So I've had three, my colleagues and people in the industry we joke about the fact that I've dealt with pretty much every type of claim you can. I've had three tornado claims in my career, which is crazy, right? I don't know any other agent that's had a tornado claim until this recent situation. So typically it falls under what's called all other wind deductible. Because it was part of that hurricane, it's possible the insurance companies will try to apply the higher 3 or 5% deductible. If I was the agent on that, because of the distance from the storm and the eye and the fact that it was really ahead of the storm, I would be fighting for that to be under the all other wind deductible. But it could be a fight, you know, I mean, that's one of those things. I mean, to me, those tornadoes that hit were pretty well ahead of that storm. If it was within the storm, I think you'd have a pretty tough argument. They probably would apply the hurricane deductible. And I have seen that during some of the storms here that the tornadoes happen. I mean, I had a building down in Deerfield area where the whole building was fine and the 7th floor was completely wiped out. All the windows knocked out, all the furniture gone. But the 8th and the 6th floor, perfectly fine. Very tough to explain. I mean, I was literally standing there looking out at the ocean with wind blowing in my face and looking at all the furniture floating in the ocean. Very, very strange.
Okay, we have one question here, then I'm gonna go to the other side of the room, then I'll come back.
Do insurance companies have the right to designate that the insurance representative from an association be the designated insurance company to handle their policies?
I'm not fully following. Do you mean a representative that they can assign a specific representative at the association, or?
No, can you said you could get a list and people can sit around the table. Can insurance companies designate that only one person can be assigned as the representative for that association?
Yes, that's typically, so there are only a couple of insurance companies that I know of that don't do it in that way, where they consider, it's called open market quoting, where they will quote for multiple agents. But the strong majority of insurance companies follow a process that's called an agent of record process. So when whoever the first person to submit to the insurance company on your behalf is, they get locked in. So if you meet with 2 agents, let's say, so insurance companies typically accept submissions 90 to 120 days ahead of your renewal. And if you go to 2 different agents during that window and you say, I want you both to quote, whoever gets there first, so we set our systems to send the submission at 12:01 a.m. at that 90th day. If theirs beats us by 10 seconds, they're your agent for that company. The other way, so, and here's the downside to that process is like, now you're just kind of piecemealing, he has 3 companies, I have 5. What if the best situation for you is layering multiple companies? And I can't access the 3 that he has. That's why I kind of gave you the guidance, pick an agent and let them go to market for you, because if you have multiple, it can actually work against you, believe it or not. But there's 2 ways to shop insurance. The way that I'm describing, or market selection, where you go through and say, give me a list of all the companies you want to go to these 2 agents. And this is a more complicated process, like I said, because you're splitting out markets, and sometimes having both of them together, even if the other agent gets a quote from one and I get a quote from one, it's much tougher for me to leverage them against each other if I don't have the quote to see what the other one's doing. If I only have an idea of what they're doing, the insurance company's like, well, I'm not really going to compete with a guessing game, right? But if I can tell them I know exactly what they're doing here, I can push them to give you much better pricing. So, you know, there is a market selection process where you can say, okay, I'm going to give these 3 markets to one agent and the rest to somebody else, or vice versa. But I still don't really recommend it. Every once in a while, I've been involved in something like that. Most agents don't even want to get involved in that situation. It's just
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions. This one and the man there in the red. 2 more questions, then I'm sure you'll stick around here for if there's other personal questions that people have for a few minutes, you can stick around. And after these 2 questions, we're going to do the raffle so that we have most of the people here. And if our Plastridge lady can please get that raffle ready.
Thank you. I'm living in Florida and in Palm Beach and in my home 28 years. My last claim was Wilma. How many years ago was that?
05.
Okay, I have never made another claim. However, my insurance has skyrocketed. 2 years ago, it doubled. No reason, no explanation. So we had to do shopping, and we did. And we wound up with Citizens. And they were only a few dollars more than what we were paying originally. I mean, when the last insurance policy, before they went crazy. Okay? I have not had any time or any place where I had to make a claim. So I'm not part of this paramount of people who do false claims. But my insurance is going up, and when does it stop? When?
Okay, so that's the question. When is it going to stop? That's her question.
Well, I do think, I mean, when you say stop, I do think it's starting to plateau, and unfortunately, my insurance did the same thing, right? I mean, I'm not immune, I don't get a friends and family discount, would be nice. But at the end of the day, the same thing is happening to me, right? And a lot of the claims over the last few years, a lot of the claims were outside of Florida. I mean, we've all been reading about the number of natural catastrophes, the increasing natural catastrophes, and the fact that they're doing much larger amounts of damage. The reality was, you know, in Hurricane Andrew 1992, that was a $23 billion catastrophe. You know, Helene and Milton this year, 55 to 60 billion. And these are happening on a much more frequent basis. We were averaging from 1970 up until a few years ago, about 5 years ago, they were averaging about 7 events per year in the United States that exceeded $1 billion. We averaged 20 plus events a year exceeding $1 billion in the last 5 years.
Okay, we know there's a problem. Yeah, they understand, we understand, yes. Preaching to the choir here. We got a problem, you're right. Yes, she's a big leader here. She knows what she's talking about. Okay, and this is the last one, and then you stick, if you can, people will.
One statement and then a question, please. In my opinion, a lot of people's opinion, the quickest solution to the crisis is somebody putting up $50 million and starting a non-profit insurance company, because the system's rigged. Okay, the question is, that hasn't been mentioned yet today, is the Chief Financial Officer of the state of Florida, Jimmy Petronis, who's in charge of Florida Office of Insurance Regulation, is resigning effective March 31st. Especially for Laurie and the insurance agent and the attorney. What's the chances of getting somebody in there that's not taking money from the insurance companies and will look after the consumers?
I'll take a swing at that question. So the rumors around town is that there are 2 senators who serve with me who are both being considered for that position. One is Joe Gruters, who today Jimmy Petronis actually endorsed for the position. Joe is a CPA by trade, but I will tell you, I'm sure he takes money from insurance companies. Almost everybody in the legislature does, I have to tell you. He is one person. The other person is named Blaise Angolia. And I'm not sure what he's the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, but it looks like they're leaning toward Joe Gruters, and I think that's the person that you're going to see take over when Jimmy Petronis leaves.
Okay, that's great. Now we have a raffle here. We're going to do 3 raffles here. If you can come up here, we'll pick them out. And just my assistants have asked that you clean the table off before you leave, so we don't have so much we have to clean off. If you could throw out your own garbage into the garbage cans. And also, don't forget, January 8th, don't come here January 1st. January 8th is going to be our January meeting. It's going to be a really good one. Yes, a health program, but not just health. We're going to have our attorney here, because what's part of a healthy lifestyle? Playing pickleball, right? So you might be wanting to develop some pickleball courts, or we're going to have our attorney give you information and legal information on that, how to go about with that. And also, we'll have a Balance for Life from Delray Medical Center. So it's going to be a really good January. So here's, to finish off, are going to be a couple of raffles.